Good evening, fantasy football fans, and welcome to another episode of Getting Defensive. I am your host, Jeff DiMatteo, founder of Gridiron Ratings. With me, as always, my partner in crime, my co-pilot, my radio intercept officer, Ronnie A. Evans. Ronnie, how you doing? Yeah, I'm pointing at you.
I'm good, man. I'm relaxed. Things are great. I won in all but one of my 9 leagues this week, so much better than this season had been going. And also felt like almost every bit of advice I gave over the last 2 weeks happened to have come true. So things are good.
Doesn't it?
That's not how it's going to work. Even the best people in this industry miss 30 to 40% of the time. So just thankful it happened, and I'm ready for it to come back to earth.
It's okay. Well, let's just keep praying for some success, right?
Yep.
We're also going to be sparsely joined this evening by a potentially special guest. Well, I mean, he's definitely special. He will potentially be a guest. That's going to be Gridiron Ratings quality control assistant, Tucker DiMatteo, my 4-year-old son. He's in the room here. I can't promise what kind of chaos may ensue. So if you hear a crash, a bang, a scream, just the kid's fine. He's just doing what kids do.
We need to get Ruffy on here, and we can have them have their own podcast.
Head scout. Yeah. Get the head scout and the quality control intern. That's what we'll call it, Tucker. Quality control intern. That's he's sitting on the floor right now playing with his Hot Wheels. Yeah, unpaid. Yeah, no, we don't. We're not that kind of. We don't make that kind of money right here. We can pay interns.
Yeah, definitely not child interns.
Yeah, I mean, there's probably a labor law out there we're breaking, but that's okay.
Not in Georgia, baby.
That's right. He lives in my house, so he's living rent free still. So hopefully that helps.
All right.
He said it's his house. Actually, so there he is.
In the middle of the street.
So there you go. There you go. There's our quality control assistant.
What's up, Tucker. Hey, here. Jeff, ask Tucker, would he start if he had to pick Dexter Lawrence or Carl Lawson this week?
Buddy, Dexter Lawrence or Carl Lawson this week? Do you like Dexter or Carl? Who do you like?
Oh, he's stumped.
He's stumped. He's feeling the same way I am. I don't know. Thanks, buddy.
Yeah, neither of them are super sexy options.
Hey, I know some folks are really in on Dexter Lawrence. I mean, there's actually been some tackle upside with him, which has been kind of nice. Mm-hmm. I think I'm going to go. I'm going to go with Lawrence there.
Sometimes you don't like to. Sometimes.
Yeah, buddy, I see it.
Well, there you go. Thank you, team. It's one of my start decisions this week.
Perfect.
All right. Well, let's do some IDP stuff, man. I mean,
yeah, let's shoot into it. So here's where we're at this week, guys. We've been going through kind of our waivers, our main picks, and we'll talk about players, all episode long. The waiver selection this week is really kind of poor. We started kind of deep diving this thing and digging into some players. And truthfully, we're not that comfortable with a lot of the players that are available this week. Hey, buddy, give me the mic back. What are you doing? There's buddy, stop. Okay, quality control intern needs to go away.
I wasn't even looking. I was looking at the player stats from this week. Oh, there he is. Tucker. He broke the mic. Well, guys, here at Gridiron Ratings, sometimes we have infiltrators in our space, and this is a moment where, it's not actually an infiltrator. It's one of our own employees, and I think they had a little too much to drink beforehand, probably a little too much out of that juice box.
He's been hitting that chocolate milk really hard this evening. Yeah, sorry about that, guys. Yeah, so instead of going through like a bunch of different waiver players we like, we're going to talk about a handful of guys here and there that might just be available that could help you. Maybe not this week, but over the course of the season. So we have one live viewer. They're looking at this saying, "What is happening on the show right now?" I'm really sorry. One guy that comes to mind that is actually really low owned right now in a lot of leagues and in a lot of the IDP space is actually TJ Watt. The guy tore his pec. They thought he was out for the year. Everybody dropped him in mass. Looks like he's going to be back in about 3 weeks. We saw some reports now, even with a little cleanup procedure that he just had done from a preseason injury he had. Looks like we're going to have this guy back before the fantasy playoffs. If you're looking to make a move and you want to grab somebody and be sneaky, grab TJ Watt, stash him on your roster if he's not already. If he's available, go out and get him right now. If you're in a balanced or sack-heavy format, this is a 20-point-a-week player, and he generally scores similarly to a running back. So when you start thinking about a high-end running back playing in a D-line spot, if you're playing on sleeper, or even in a linebacker spot if you're playing on MFL, TJ Watt is a must-have, must-roster player. So that's a guy you really need to be looking out for. Another guy that kind of comes to mind is the suspended Willie Gay. We've been talking about this guy for a few weeks. He's going to be back in a week or two, and when he comes back, he's going to be useful. He's going to be a functional player.
And I'll own it. My Darius Harris prediction has not worked out.
He had a couple big plays, though. He balled out the 1 week. I mean, it's just a matter of, was this a player that was going to ball out every week? We had to try and weigh, his talent over the opportunity.
I would say this. I missold. I made a mistake on selling how high I thought his floor was going to be in Willie Gay's absence, which is okay. We all make mistakes there.
Well, with how bad the Chiefs look defending the run against the Raiders, it's not that surprising. They really need that additional guy they can put in the box, because the trouble is with the Raiders personnel, they couldn't load the box. They had to keep coming out in nickel because the Raiders offer enough pass catchers, even with Waller off the field, because Matt Collins has been functional. You got Devontae Adams, so you have to double, and you've got Third and Renfro. I spread you out if I'm the Raiders, which they did, and then Josh Jacobs ran roughshod over their defense.
Yep.
So that's I don't know that it was a bad call. I think that's from a process standpoint. I like the player. You just couldn't have predicted the fact that the Raiders were going to be so effective at just manhandling that defense the way they did. So.
And they did. It was quite the game, although we don't need to get into it, but I hope the NFL finds itself and realizes that it can chill a little bit on this quarterback stuff.
Another bad, we had a couple of those bad roughing the passer calls.
I play in a league.
Making it hard.
I play in a league with someone who would have won their league this week on the Monday night game if that had been a counted play.
Are we talking about the Grady Jarrett sack or the Chris Jones sack fumble?
Talking about the Chris Jones one.
Oh, yeah. How do you possess the ball and then get roughing the passer? He's not a passer anymore. He didn't have the ball. What are we talking about? So
at that point, he was being too mean to the defender.
Right, exactly. That's what it is. So roughing the tackler. I don't know. Look, what we really want to get into tonight, though, is you've got those high impact guys that are coming off suspension, coming off injury. If they're on your wire, go get them. Right. If you need some more guys to pick up, last week's episode still stands in terms of Uchenna Nwasu. I still like Rasheem Green. Still like guys like Zaire Franklin is an absolute monster, and he's still not 100% owned. I don't understand why. Those are all guys to look at. If you need a deeper dive at some of the waiver players that are available in a lot of leagues, go to gridironratings.com, click the strategy link, and it's going to take you right there. Bottom of the page is all the waiver wire players we like at a bunch of positions: D-line, linebacker, corner, safety. We got them all covered. Just they're listed out with their snap shares, how they've been scoring year to date, the whole bit. What you got there, Ronnie? You trying to slow me down, stop me? What you doing, a little hand thing?
No, that was unconscious.
Okay. Okay. Well, then the big thing we want to talk about tonight is process. Let's get into a process of how do we find guys on our own free agency heap or on our own waiver wire? Like Ronnie, you and I play in a couple IDP leagues together, and I know you've always made it a point to stream certain positions on defense, specifically defensive back. Why don't you take us through kind of your process? What are some of the key things you're looking for when you're trying to find a guy to go just plug into your lineup for a week here, a week there, or maybe even 4 or 5 weeks at a time?
Well, one of the things that's hard, it's a hard truth about IDP is it does always come back to scoring, and I hate talking about that. I hate hearing everyone talk about it, so I'm going to ignore that, just move on. I'm just going to tell you the type of leagues I play in. I play in leagues where a player that has a good week and it's an elite score is going to score the same as another player that has a good week and an elite score.
On offense. So an elite wide receiver and elite running back versus
very granularly balanced across the board. So I can't speak as much to people who play in weird scoring or even just standard scoring. But my strategy when I look at it on specific roster moves week to week, there's only going to be 6 to 8 defensive linemen that put up true game-changing performances for fantasy football. And then there's only going to be roughly double that from the linebacker position. But the thing with defensive backs is on any given week, there is going to be somewhere around 10 to 20 guys who put up DB2 numbers. And so that's why I stream that position. This time of the year, though, strategy-wise in IDP, I'm mostly just looking at the final 2 or 3 pieces I want to grab off waivers and focusing more on trades. Because at this point, any waiver ads I'm making moving forward are going to be guys that are coming in because of injury opportunity. The younger guys that were emerging, we've all seen the snap counts. The things have started to make sense. And there's a few guys that are interesting, like Deion Jones, if he was dropped. I think once he's healthy and he comes back, he's not going to Cleveland to sit on the bench. Jacob Phillips is terrible. So, like, there's things that you have to pay attention to with players that aren't necessarily going to be on waivers right now. And my strategy is mostly just trade negotiations for the next 4 weeks and picking up, if I have fab, like figuring out what's the guy. Now that week 6 to week 9, who's the guy that I'm going to go in and spend 50% of my fab on? Because I need to pull the trigger on that in all my leagues. I haven't spent big yet. That's a ramble. I don't know if I answered.
No, it's good. No, I mean that's cool. Like, I was just kind of looking to see like kind of what the process looked like for you, right? Trying to figure out like where do we go, right? How does that play out? And I know for me, when I'm starting to break it down and I start thinking about, okay, well, who do I want to put on like our list on the website in terms of the waiver guys to go chase down and all this? I read some of the content that's out there, but not a lot. And I was reading a piece, and I'm not going to disparage or put anybody on blast in terms of what site it was or who the writer was. But the guy basically said, well, I can only speak to tackle-heavy formats because sacks should be bonuses. And he named 3 players that we've been talking about for weeks that you should go add. And I'm just like, these guys should already be added in leagues. Like, they should not be available. And do you want me to open that there, buddy? Okay, our chief scout needs some – or I'm sorry, Ruffy's a chief scout. Our – quality control intern here needs a snack, I guess. So when I look at it, I start breaking down, okay, number 1, performance. Are these guys performing? Are they getting you fantasy points in your league, in your scoring? Thanks, buddy. There is a wide disparity, and you alluded to it in terms of scoring formats and types. And, 8 points for a defensive lineman in one league might be incredible. In another league, it might be complete crap, right? So you've got to look at the waiver wire and look at the points per week these guys are getting and start to identify, does this guy profile as a player that would beat the starters that are in my lineup?
Yeah.
Is he beating the guys on my bench in my, like, where does this guy fit on
That's
my
where
roster?
I'm at right now with most leagues.
Yeah. And so it's like, and if they're doing it consistently where it's like, look, if it's 1 week, I'm not worried about it. But if I look at a guy on the waiver wire and I'm going to take a guy like Jihad Ward, right? This is a guy that's not widely rostered, defensive lineman, going out and getting you 11 points a week in a lot of leagues, balanced scoring format. You go out and you get him and you realize, well, wait a minute, I've got 3 or 4 defensive linemen and they're all averaging between 8 and 10 a week, and Jihad Ward has beaten their averages 3 out of 5 weeks. I'm probably going to find a reason to go get Jihad Ward on my roster because it's probably going to represent an incremental upgrade, right? So performance, and make sure you have multiple weeks of it. Well, that's not going to change.
Can I add in a little tag team right there? So in that you were talking about strategy in general and looking at like weighing on your team, if a player on waivers can slot in and start for me, or how do they compare against the guys that I have slated to slide into the lineup if needed?
Right.
And I spoke on, like, right now, my number 1 game plan in all my leagues is trying to figure out the trades I can make over the next 4 weeks in the 2 or 3, if I'm crazy, like big waiver moves. Because at this point, I've kind of made my team.
Sure.
In that situation you described, it's not uncommon in IDP leagues for people to miss out on waiver pickups. It's one of the best things about IDP is that you're guaranteed that at least roughly a third to a half of your league isn't going to be picking up people every week.
Mm-hmm.
And if you can go in and you can get a guy like Jihad Ward, or you could have gone in a few weeks ago and gotten other players with similar impact, you can then go and trade those guys it is so much easier to accumulate pieces that push trades over the edge in IDP leagues. And I feel like people talk about that in concept and tangentially, but it's the biggest way that I've succeeded and really dominated most of the leagues that I've played in with IDP. Is just mid-season, like, waiver pickups that I slide in as starters and then trading the guys that I've drafted that have names and just rotating in and just shuffling like that.
And I think people don't realize with IDP is that on offense, there's 5 players on the field at any given time that are not relevant to fantasy from the standpoint of their offensive linemen. They don't get scores at all, anywhere, for anything, On defense, all 11 guys have a chance to get points.
Dude, it's like 2.5 times the player pool.
Right, exactly. It's a huge deal, right? So when I start
Yeah.
thinking about, hey, let's find some guys that are performing, and I'm going to lean on the guys we have on the site as guys we like. Defensive lineman, hey, what about Justin Jones in Chicago? This is a guy no one really cares about, right? He's getting 65% of the snaps on the D-line, which in a rotational D-line is pretty decent. You've got a team in the Chicago Bears that have allowed have been awarded the second most tackles in the NFL, and he's available in 72% of leagues right now. He's getting you about 12 to 13 points a week as a defensive lineman in a balanced scoring format. He's getting you more in a sack heavy. This is a guy where he's sitting on your waiver wire right now and he's free. Go get him. Go ahead and drop some dead weight. Maybe another guy that you've got that's hurt, or maybe a name that's just not doing it for you. Like you could have a name brand player and you're sitting here like, well, when's he going to do something? I can't drop this name brand. Yes, you can, because there's a bunch of other guys out there getting points. Don't give up on guys that are consistently getting you the points that you need in your lineup, because that's how you win points in your lineup, not points on the waiver wire.
Can we talk trade strategy a little bit, just in that line of thought?
I'll tell you, why don't we hit that right after we hit the next? There's 2 more points to add to our performance piece, and then let's hit trade strategy, because that's something I think that plays into all of this. So after we've looked at performance, 2 other things you might want to consider when just evaluating, hey, who are the guys I want to target on that waiver wire? Snap share. So a guy went out and he put up a bunch of points in 2 consecutive weeks, but out of 5 weeks, only 2 of those weeks did he get any snaps. Weeks 1 and 3, he got a ton of snaps and he put up great numbers, but weeks 2, 4, and 5, he didn't do anything, so he wasn't on the field. That's a lot of inconsistency and a lot of volatility that you don't want to bring into your lineup. Look for those guys that are getting consistent snap share, whether it's 55% roughly every week or 70% or whatever that number is. You want the number to be consistent. I don't care if it's 100% or 50%. You just want it to be consistent. Because if you can say, well, this guy plays half the snaps and he still gets me 12 points a week, that's all that matters. You don't get bonuses because he plays all the snaps. Okay, unless you're playing in some kind of funky scoring where you get points per snap. So snap share is mildly important. You're looking for consistency, not necessarily total volume. And then lastly, the remaining kind of big piece here is, what's the mix for tackles? You want some guys, regardless of format, balance, tackle heavy, sack heavy, whatever. Tackles are still the most common play for IDP players. Just like carries and targets and on the offensive side, you're going to see a lot of players getting tackles. Make sure your guy is getting enough tackles to make him a valuable add. If you bring on a defensive lineman and he's going to get you 4 tackles a week, make sure that that's going to stack up against the other guys you have. So if he doesn't get the sack, at least what you're getting then is still a solid floor sack, and he gets a forced fumble or a sack and a fumble recovered. Now it's a huge bonus, and that guy gave you a huge surplus to work with. Don't take the sack as the floor and then you treat tackles like the surplus. That's backwards process, and it's going to leave you really disappointed more weeks than not. Mm-hmm. But those are kind of the big 3 things. So, as you fish your own league, just think about those 3 things. As long as you can check those 3 boxes, you can say, hey, look, yeah, I've got a guy out here who's already performing to a point and looks really good. He's beaten, all the guys on my bench, and he's basically a starter for me. Check. Cool. He's playing roughly the same number of snaps every week within some reasonable, window. Maybe it's within 5 to 10% or 15%, whatever the number you decide is not volatile, I guess. Check. And then lastly, hey, this guy's getting plenty of tackles. He's helping my lineup, even if he doesn't get a sack or a bonus play. Check. Hey, let's add him. I'm probably getting him for free because IDP, a lot of guys aren't really putting in the work to get those players, and again, I lean on like Jihad Ward, right? People aren't falling over themselves to add Jihad Ward. They're not falling over themselves to add Justin Jones, but these are dudes that you can probably get for free right now that are really going to help your roster.
Agreed.
So let's talk trade strategy. You wanted to bring up trades. We want to kind of keep this thing another 15, maybe 20 minutes tops. But let's talk a little trade strategy.
Mm-hmm.
So what are you looking at right now in an IDP league? Like, who are you targeting?
So overall, holistically, in IDP leagues right now, not even player specific, but there are just about an equal number of players that have been picked up off of waivers and put in lineups as there are players that you would want to go and trade for. So I have to, when I'm looking at trading in IDP leagues, I have to bake in the replaceability of IDP assets. And that almost inversely is just completely false once you get to the premier IDP assets at the top. So like the Nick Bosa, Myles Garrett, Aaron Donald, right? Maybe Max Crosby this year and a couple other guys, but really those three dudes over the last 3 years, like whole woo lad. Oh my goodness. If you have one of them, you're scoring 7 to 8 more points a week than anyone else on average at that
Sure.
position. But then you have this bulk of like 15 to 20 dudes that all kind of just like flop around in the same big amalgamous blob of rankings. It's kind of like tight ends can be. And you look at linebackers and it's a similar thing, but it's just deeper in both groups. And so when I'm trading, what I was getting at is if you've been paying attention to the Gridiron ratings and you have picked up like Frankie Louvu's early, you've picked up the Talona Hufanga's early, you've picked up all of these guys that are starting every week in your lineup if they're healthy. You should then be able to go in any IDP league and take the guys that you drafted, the guys like, give me a name of a guy with a big name who's done fine this year, but isn't like ridiculous. Call it like a Derwin James. Let's use that as an example. Derwin James.
I was going to say Jesse Bates, Derwin James. Yeah, sure.
Derwin James, you can trade Derwin James to anyone in your league, and depending on the price. If you got Hufanga and maybe a couple other good safeties, like you've done so well with waivers because you've been paying attention to good insight, that now you can go flip a Derwin James plus like a Gabe Davis and pick up like a Nick Chubb. Or that's actually a ridiculous example. You wouldn't trade that for Nick Chubb, but you could go and pick up an elite wide receiver. Like you could go trade it for DK Metcalf, for somebody that doesn't believe in the Geno Smith conundrum. Go trade those two guys right now for DK Metcalf and maybe something else, pull it back, and it doesn't affect your starting lineup. You just prove it. So that was a long rant, but I just wanted to get at how important it is to play the waiver game relatively early, not week 1, not necessarily even week 2, but week 3 to week 5. You want to pay attention to waivers and IDP. You want to pick up the guys that you need, and then it gives you the ability to purge yourself of the big name guys that are performing just as well as the low name guys, which unfortunately every year in IDP, it's a good chunk of them.
Right. The way we're looking at things right now, we have 5 weeks worth of data, right? Mm-hmm. The guys who are good now are going to keep being good in 5 weeks. So don't let them sit on the wire. Don't let them not put points in your lineup. Go get them, put them in your lineup. Let's focus on some guys, though, that maybe we can go target in trades. Like, how do you feel about a guy like Aiden Hutchinson, where he hasn't put up a ton of sacks, but the profile's there. He's getting after the quarterback. He's always around the quarterback. The pressure rate's actually really good. But is this a guy where do you think anybody in a redraft league might be getting a little frustrated that he's not getting the sacks, and maybe they're willing to move on from him?
Yeah, I would look at a guy like Aiden Hutchinson, though, and do you really think that he's better than Josh Jones?
I think it depends on your league scoring type, and that's where, again, how do you play, right? So for me, I'm looking at Hutchinson, I'm like, okay, well, there's 3 tackles a week, right? And he's got a really good shot at the sack more weeks than not because the guy's always around the quarterback. And so that really does help. Now, Detroit's on a bye this week. The only reason why I brought that up is that because they're off, somebody could be scrambling for some help defensively. And if you have a surplus at a position, you might be able to go capture the upside of Hutchinson, who has a potential to be that Nick Bosa type player down the stretch and really impact your roster. I know as a rookie, I expected a 10 sack season out of him. He's already got 3, 4. So he's not far off that pace. Actually, he might be on that pace right now. But a 10 sack guy is more than useful in any scoring format. 3 to 4 tackles a week on top of that. You're doing pretty well in most leagues.
I can see that. I'm trying to find, while you were talking, I was trying to find like a data set that showed me ADP versus point total on the year.
Dude, ADP is like the hardest thing on the planet to track down because none of it's reliable.
Yeah, I guess you ignore that and you go look up, like, give me the aggregate preseason ranking from the big sites. That's basically the ADP.
Kind of.
It's basically name value.
Yeah, exactly. Everyone's always drafting all the names. They're not really looking for the situations. But, there's a couple of other guys that I might go out and try and target right now where it's like, fantasy managers are probably getting a little frustrated and you can probably go out and find some guys. Nick Bosa's banged up. A guy that you can go out and go grab right now is Samson Ebukam. go get one of the 49er edge rushers, man. With Nick Bosa having a groin injury, he may not play against Atlanta. Something to keep an eye on. I'm not afraid of taking another one of the 49ers D linemen to go ahead and make a play against Marcus Mariota and the Falcons. That offensive line is not impenetrable. I really expect the 49ers to get some work in against Atlanta in Atlanta. So that's one place to look where you can probably buy a guy for nothing or even get him off the wire. Let's see. Who's another guy that's probably – oh, here you go. Hassan Reddick. Hassan Reddick's a guy we've been talking about all offseason. He's got another fairly cush matchup. He's got Dallas coming up here. I've got him pegged in right now as like our number 7 D lineman on the week. And that's a guy that, again, you can probably target him in a trade for nearly nothing. Somebody's probably starting him. They probably like him, don't love him. And you could probably give up something from a position of strength at any position and probably land him. It's not going to take much. You can go ahead and move a linebacker, move a defensive back. Hell, you could probably even use him as a throw-in if you're trading Derwin James for something else.
Yeah.
Because he just doesn't get the name recognition, and despite the fact that he performs, a lot of folks just don't really pay attention to him. So that's somebody that I would look at. Some guys I'd probably try to sell. I'm probably trying to move on from guys like Sam Hubbard. People might recognize the name and be like, oh, Sam Hubbard's a good player. I'll take him. But this is a dude
hasn't
who's
been
going
getting the tackles he used to, and that was the whole thing. He used to be so valuable. They just sit there, just baseline 7 to 8 points a week.
Still a young player, can still get something done, but
current situation, no.
Right, exactly. That's a guy you can potentially move. Heck, you could probably sell Hubbard for Reddick and be further ahead, right? You might add 2 or 3 points a week to your lineup that way. But those are some guys that I might target, at least on the D line. As we look ahead, linebacker, we've beaten some of these guys kind of into the ground. Frankie Louvu didn't play this week. He had a late injury that scratched him from the lineup, but that's a guy you need to have. Deion Jones is probably available out there. He's going to play for Cleveland. I know he's been inactive all year, but the guy didn't forget how to play football. He'll be fine, and he'll probably put up some production. You got something there?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Guy you brought up way in the offseason. I poo-pooed it a little bit, and I have to say, been right for most of the year so far. But Montez Sweat should be picked up everywhere right now.
Yeah, Montez Sweat's a guy that, you're getting Chase Young back here in a couple of weeks. And Sweat's getting the bulk of those line shifts, and they're sliding blocking schemes at him. And it's actually freeing up the other D linemen. So that's why you're noticing, Jonathan Allen has been absolutely crushing it. Deron Payne has been crushing it. Now, when you plug in Chase Young and you're going to tell me, okay, well, now I got Chase Young on one side, and I got Montez Sweat on the other side. Now you can't slide protection either way. That D line is about to get dirty. It's going to be everything we expected them to be last year, but I expect to see it in spades, by the tail end of this year. So definitely something to keep an eye on there. Love Montez Sweat.
Well, I have one bit of advice that doesn't have to do with IDP when we close out, but I'm not going to say it yet.
All right, fair enough. I mean, a couple linebackers, Uchenna Nwasu, we've talked about him on waivers. I don't know, man. There's not a whole lot of other guys that I'm out here trying to target, I guess. But I'm telling folks, hey, find that guy that has a little bit of upside. I'm not even afraid of taking a guy who's hurt right now or on a bye. Hutchinson, Jeremy Chin.
I'll throw a name out there.
Sure, hit me.
In a league, I don't play in these leagues, but if you play in leagues where you have to start a cornerback and he's not picked up yet, go ahead and go grab Tariq Woolen. I'm not saying this because he ran real fast.
He ran like 600 miles an hour the other day.
I know, but he's playing. He's making plays. He's doing that typical like 2 to 3 rookie a year thing where a rookie cornerback puts up points in IDP. It's why I quit using cornerbacks because it's annoying. But Tariq's putting up DB2, DB3 numbers consistently now. So he's worth a pickup.
Cool. No, I think that's a good one. There's corners is kind of a mess, right? Like we try to put some stuff out on corners. Truthfully, like we don't even really keep up with the injury stuff when we do the start sits because it seems like injury designations change too frequently. And so we don't want to remove players due to injury. We just kind of want to project where they would be if they were healthy. But I mean, when you look at what we have with like Marlon Humphrey is always a top guy, right? Someone's going to have him. Ronald Darby has been really useful. Anthony Brown.
Sneed's been the best corner in the game.
Dude, L'Jarius Sneed's been really good. I actually haven't taken a bit of a hit this week. He's been insane in terms of his, week over week production. But, this week he's got Buffalo, and, that seems to me like he's going to be –
that game.
Yeah, he's going to be in a track meet this week. There's going to be somebody is going to be taking Kansas City deep, and it's going to either be Gabe Davis, who had that cool 98, 99-yard touchdown, or Steph Diggs. And, if those guys are running down the field because Kansas City's vulnerable deep, it's going to really hurt Snead's ability to go ahead and make some plays because he's going to get outrun. Like, I like Snead, but I don't love him in this particular matchup. I've got him pinned in there as right now he's the cornerback 9. I get where you're at. I see what you're saying. But some teams, if you're looking at individual teams, you're like, hey, what teams can I go target for tackles? Hey, man, Houston's number 1 in tackle opportunity. Chicago's number 2, Seattle, Detroit, Pittsburgh, Minnesota, Atlanta. All these kind of bad-ish teams, they're getting a bunch of tackles awarded. Go target players that play on those defenses. Go get Malcolm Rodriguez from Detroit.
Yep.
So that's just a couple little
Montez Sweat
pointers.
brought him up. He plays Chicago this week.
Well, yeah, but Washington doesn't actually get a ton of tackles as a team, though. Let's see, where were they at? They're actually 23rd right now.
Well, I guess it's in line of good matchups. That's a great defense.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely, yeah. Justin Fields takes too long holding the football. I think there's going to be some sack opportunity there for sure. So, but I mean, that's kind of the gist, man. This is kind of a rough week. It's, we're starting the bye weeks now. We're kind of hitting that lull season. If any of these guys we've talked about the last few weeks are still in your wire, go get them because they're still putting up points. They're just not doing it for you. Go get those points into your lineup. It'll make your life better. That's really all I've got tonight. Ronnie, where are you at? What do you got tonight?
Well, I was just going to throw in one thing. So you see this right here. I got this Tennessee. I'm not going to talk about how much I love Tennessee. I obviously do. But currently, the line on that game is Alabama 7.5. If you want to make money this weekend, put money on Tennessee to cover that spread. That's all I got.
I'll tell you what. You know what? In the name of making money this week, I'm going to pull DraftKings Sportsbook on my phone here because in the state of Georgia, I can't place any bets myself. So I have been stressed out over the idea that I've been sitting here getting a bunch of these picks right and just watching money I could have made go away.
Well, so like last week, Tennessee, they were 3-point favorites against Pittsburgh.
Mm-hmm.
And a bunch of people, to their credit, a bunch of Tennessee podcasters got out. We're like, hey, this offense scores too much. If they win, they're not going to win by 3 points against Pitt. They just had a close game. Heupel's going to make sure that doesn't happen twice.
Sure.
And they did. It was easy money. They're all just like, that's the easiest bet I've ever made in my life. I don't think this one's that easy, but I'm saying this for the sake of being a Tennessee fan and just to throw it up. We talk about fantasy football all the time on here. We don't talk a lot of just general betting with football, but it's all kind of the same. I'm putting money on Tennessee this week for the first time in years.
That's ballsy. I never put money on my own teams to do really anything. And what is going on here? I'm struggling to make my app work right now. Let's see here. I think it's because I'm in the dungeon downstairs in my basement. Maybe we'll go ahead and we'll get some of that content up on Saturday. I'll write some of these down and we'll go over them on the slate on Saturday. How's that sound?
Sounds like a plan.
Cool. Well, for Ronnie A. Evans, I'm Jeff DiMatteo. And, this is the first week in a few weeks we didn't have anybody pipe in the middle of the show with an offensive question.
I know. Well, we didn't have any viewers right now. I think people are all just getting ready for this Tennessee-Bama game.
That's it. That's exactly what it is. Well, with that, let's go ahead and send it out. Good luck this week. Use the process. Get some of the points in your lineup. Go kick ass this week. We'll see you next week. Take care.